Hello, everyone. I thought I would talk to you about the points of view that are in my book, The Ecstasy and the Ignominy. Now, of course, there are three points of view in the story. There's the point of view of Catherine Harris, Edward Compton, and Desmond Archer. And while writing, I had to think like each of the characters. I couldn't think as myself or write as myself. I had to think like the characters. So, for example, you have Catherine Harris, who is in the story a woman who lives in the 19th century. She is the wife of Frederick Harris, a wealthy industrialist, and of course, Catherine felt like she had to marry Frederick in order to survive. And of course, at that time, there was very limited economic opportunity for women. They often struggled to survive. Now, it's not that there wasn't any economic opportunity. It often depended on your class, where you grew up and such, and also your location as well. But many women felt like they had no choice but to marry wealthy men in order to secure their survival. And Catherine was such a woman. But of course, over time, she suffered from regrets, and I had to deal with those regrets in the story, and I had to imagine what it would be like to be Catherine and have those regrets and have those feelings, and I also as a man had to imagine what it would be like for Catherine to have passion for Edward, and I had to write in that headspace and in that mindset, and so that was somewhat challenging for me. But I often find that female characters, especially, had have a certain poetic resonance, a graceful resonance to their voices when I imagine them in my head, and so I feel like in some ways I can write more effectively from at least from a poetic point of view while writing female characters as compared to male characters. And now, of course, I had to write also for Desmond Archer, who is in the story a sociopath. I mean, it's unclear whether he's truly a sociopath, but he certainly acts like a sociopath. And Desmond is probably the least sympathetic character in the book, and I had to think like a sociopath. I had to and I had to espouse points of view that I myself do not hold, but I had to make it believable. And I also, because I often feel that some writers, when they write characters that they don't like, they often try to come up with like the weakest versions of arguments. Because if a writer disagrees with with a point of view, they'll often present the weakest points of view so they can knock it down. Whereas I like to present the strongest points of view that I know of a position that I don't agree with, so I can make the character seem real and not just like a nitwit. And now, when I was writing Edward, Edward is probably the character that is most like myself. Although he's not exactly like myself, I would say that Edward is more cynical than I am overall. But I would say he's probably the most like myself, and so it wasn't as much of a challenge to write him. And so, but I had to imagine what it would be like to be these characters. And I think some writers, they just try to write as from their own point of view, even when they're writing from another character's point of view. But I don't do that. I want to write as if I am the character. So I think that is good advice for writers to follow.